Hello, my name is VISALHOUNUO. I'll be explaining on the topic poliovirus. Here I'll be explaining the pathogenesis and the clinical manifestation of poliovirus. Coming first to the pathogenesis. Pathogenesis is how a person gets infected or how the microorganism from a particular source enters the body through various modes, undergoes a mechanism and successfully causes infection. Here first is the source of infection. It is from where the virus is present and can cause infection. The poliovirus is shed in the feces of the patient infected with the poliovirus, and so the poliovirus is present in the feces of the patient infected with the poliovirus. Next is the mode of transmission. It is how a person gets infection from the patient or how the patient transmit infection through various modes. Here first is fecal-oral route. The virus can be transmitted from the feces of the patient to the oral cavity of the healthy individual by contaminated hand or unhygienic practices. Next is oral to oral route. The virus can be transmitted from the oral cavity of the infected patient to the oral cavity of the healthy individual. The viral transmission from the oral cavity of the patient can occur because the poliovirus is initially present in the pharynx of the infected patient. Next is inhalation. In a patient infected with the poliovirus, during coughing, sneezing, or talking, they expel out the poliovirus into the air from their pharynx. And when a healthy individual inhales such air containing the poliovirus, they get infected through inhalation. And very rarely, the virus can be transmitted through conjunctiva. Next is mechanism of pathogenesis. Once the virus enters the body, it undergoes a mechanism to successfully cause infection. From those modes of transmission, it is seen the virus either enters through the oral cavity or nasal cavity. So from the site of entry, the virus initially multiplies in the pharynx and intestinal mucosa and goes down and divides in the gastrointestinal cells for about a week and then enters the lymphoid tissues. The virus then enters the blood circulation for the first time, which is called as primary viremia. Viremia means the presence of virus in blood. From the blood circulation, the virus enters the reticuloendothelial cells. Reticuloendothelial cells is present in the lining of liver, spleen, bone marrow, and macrophages. And here the virus multiplies in large number. Due to the increase in the number of the virus, it results in the spillage of the virus into the blood circulation or the entry of the virus into the blood circulation for the second time, which is called as secondary viremia. And then from the blood circulation, the virus reaches the meninges. Meninges is the membrane covering the brain, and then it crosses over the CNS, central nervous system. Inside this, the virus multiply in the motor neuron, specifically in the anterior horn cell. Due to the multiplication of the virus in the motor neuron, it leads to the damage of the motor neuron. There are various types of muscles in our body, each of which are controlled by different type of neurons. So, the damage of the spinal neurons leads to the weakness of those muscles which are controlled by that particular neuron, resulting in atrophy of muscles and flaccid paralysis. Atrophy of muscles is loss of muscles, and flaccid paralysis is loose and floppy muscles, which are seen in patients infected with poliovirus. However, sensation in the affected limbs remain unaffected. Next is clinical manifestation. The patients start to show signs and symptoms as a result of infection or damage caused by the microorganisms. Here the first stage is inapparent infection. About 90 to 95% of the people who are infected with the poliovirus does not show any signs and symptoms, that is asymptomatic, but they undergo seroconversion. When a person is infected with a virus, immediately the antibody against the virus is not detectable in the blood. So the time period during which a specific antibody develops and becomes detectable in the blood is called as seroconversion. After seroconversion has occurred, the disease can be detected in the blood test for antibody, and among which about 5 to 10% will show mild signs and symptoms. Next stage is minor illness. Going back to the pathogenesis, the stage where the virus enters into the blood circulation for the first time, which is called as primary viremia. At this stage, the patients start to show mild symptoms like the fever, headache, sore throat, malaise, which lasts for about 1 to 5 days. This stage is called as minor illness. At this stage, majority of the cases get resolved and is called as abortive poliomyelitis. Next stage is non-paralytic poliomyelitis. In some cases, about 3 to 4 days later, fever comes on again and along with stiff neck and other features of meningitis. Meningitis is inflammation of the meninges, and examples of features of meningitis are fever, headache, nausea, vomiting, and mental confusion. Sometimes the condition does not progress further and is known as non-paralytic poliomyelitis. Very rarely, in some cases, the infection progresses on and to the next stage, which is called as paralytic poliomyelitis, which results in flaccid paralysis. In this, the paralyzed muscles recover in about 4 to 8 weeks, leaving behind residual paralysis. That is, though the patient is fully recovered of the polio, but it leaves behind those muscles which are damaged during the course of infection. Thank you.